Thanks, everyone. So yeah, this is Full Stack in a Weekend. So I am Josh Feinberg. I'm the co-founder and CTO of Tip Yourself. We're an online savings app. Check us out. But as Amanda alluded to, most of you are here for my dog, Oreo. So Oreo, when my wife and I got him, he's had some stomach issues, and this has led to us having to deal with those stomach issues a lot. So we took him to the vet, and she kind of wanted us to start keeping track of everything. And because I'm a programmer, I could have just searched if something existed, but I was like, I'm just going to build something. So I spent that weekend building this app to track a lot of these events. So you'll notice through the talk, nobody wants to say the word throw up a lot, but my dog throws up a lot. So I used the word sickness, throw up. You'll see it kind of thrown in. But yeah. So I'll start off with defining full stack. So full stack, it's kind of hard to define, and I was even a little worried what a lot of you guys would think. So I like this definition: the entirety of a computer system or application comprising of the front end and the back end. So for the purposes of this talk, our front end is going to be a simple Android app, and for the purposes of back end, it's going to be a backend server. So just a simple REST API. So for all of you who are expecting a multi-platform talk, I'm sorry to let you down. I'm sure that there's something else interesting in this room, but I'll still talk about my dog a lot, so feel free to stay. But the reason that I didn't go multi-platform on this is, one, we do have a great set of tools on the JVM, and that's where I'm most comfortable coming as an Android developer. So what were my project goals? So the first thing was to share as much code as possible between the front end and the back end. As it's Kotlin, it can be used everywhere. We should use it everywhere we can. Develop it completely in Kotlin. I don't think I'd be speaking at Kotlin everywhere if I didn't. But obviously a great tool, a great language that provides us a lot of these abilities to use it everywhere. I wanted to deploy my backend to Google Cloud using their Datastore platform. So I could have also titled this Full Stack in a Weekend and completely free. So GCP, the app engine, it allows us plenty of hours of free usage, which is just my wife and I tracking my dog. So we didn't really need any of that. And the Datastore product, it gives us a gig of free storage, which hopefully my dog doesn't require a gig of free, and 50,000 reads. So it gives us a lot for free. To build a mobile app, I also need some way to enter it. I'm an Android developer, so went with mobile. Most importantly, to have fun. This was a weekend project, so decided to have fun with it. And, of course, Oreo always has fun. So, as I said, come here for the dog fix. So, I'll start out with a little quick app demo. There's not much to it. So we'll see if this demo actually works. As we all know, doing stuff live, always entertaining. Okay. Oh, there's the app. So simple list here, the days that he got sick, what times, the contents of it. Some simple statistics, the last 30 days, last 7 days. He was very nice for this presentation, wanted you all to know that he's been doing very well. And then just a simple ad screen where we can just go at the date, time, and the content. Okay. So that was the app. So let's talk about the architecture. So the main part of this is we're going to have this shared module. So this shared module is going to consist of all of our models that we're going to want to share. So that comes from everything from just the definitions, how we're going to read the JSON, how we're going to post it from our server, and then how we're going to store it in our database. And then also some route definitions so that we know how we can get and post our data. Next up, we have the app module. So this is just going to be our Android app. So the UI, a list of all the stick events, the statistics view, everything I just showed you, and there are all of our networking logic. We're going to use Retrofit in there just because everybody loves Retrofit. Then we have the server module, which is our REST API, which is just going to have all of those endpoints, as well as logic for reading to and getting information from the database. So let's talk about the shared module. So as I said, one of the things that I want to share is my routes. So this is probably the easiest class. It's a bunch of constant values. So this allows me, if I decided to go with a better name than throw up for my endpoints, or if I decided to rename my stats to statistics, then I can easily get that, and just in a simple recompile, I'll get that on both the app side and the server side. The more interesting one is the model part. So here we just have basically all the models required. So you can see we can use classes, enum classes, field classes. These annotations are from a library called Objectify. I'll go over that a bit more later. That's going to be for how we talk to our database. So yeah, an entity is just a root class, and then subclass is kind of what it sounds like. But here, again, since we're all on the JVM, even though we're full stack, we can just use JSON. So I can use a couple of JSON adapters to help parse my enum and field classes. Next up, the app. I already showed this to you guys. Yeah, very simple app. Sure, there's a lot of Android developers here, so probably didn't seem like much. Also, the UI is ugly. I will admit to that. I'm not a designer. So the network interface. So like I said, we're going to use Retrofit here. So we're just going to create an interface called the Oreo tracker network. And I'm just going to have a bunch of suspend functions. So I'm not sure if there's a talk on coroutines today, but check out coroutines if you haven't seen it yet. But what I alluded to is with the routes file, you can see I have just all these constants. And again, if I just wanted to change the name, recompile, and we're good to go. And then, again, yeah, just JSON parsing. So I'm going to register my type adapters. These classes all exist inside my shared module. So I can use the time adapters and the time classes, and you can use them just like you'd expect, even though they're in this shared module. The server. So this was my favorite part. So a little bit this morning in our keynote, we had some talks about Ktor. Ktor is also probably one of my favorite Kotlin projects. So for those of you that don't know what it is, it's a server framework built by JetBrains. So yeah, building for asynchronous servers and clients. Really great, really simple to use, and again, it was a great project, and I wanted something that I knew would just work, and JetBrains has provided a lot of great tools for that. Next up is this library called Objectify. So this is a library written by Google. It's unfortunately still in Java, but it allows us to connect our code to the data stores using the annotations that I said, like entity and subclass. My favorite part about this is the part that I just bolded. Big novices immediately productive. Again, weekend. I'm a novice. Great description of a library there. So definitely brought in a lot of help. So this is my route file for my server. I was using, then it was the experimental locations. I think that it might have gone final recently. But so I just have some routes here. And the key thing to note on here is, again, I was just able to use those same constants, and we get that safety of using those constant values. So some key files. So when you go to build this and you're deploying to GCP, there's a bunch of key things that I had to Google around and make sure that they deployed well. So the first one is your resources application comp. So this, I believe, is actually a Kotlin thing. So this is just going to define where your main function is. So here, in this instance, it's where we're going to define our Ktor server. The next few are all going to be in this web app directory. So this is going to help us. The compiler, we're going to use Gradle here, is going to build a war file for us. So it needs the war file when it gets deployed to App Engine. App Engine needs to know how to build your instance and how it's going to run it. So you need to make sure to have some files here. The first one is the App Engine Web. So this is your App Engine configuration file. This one is nicely generated for you when you go to create your Google Cloud account. So you don't have to worry about too much unless you're a DevOps person, in which case you can configure a lot of your tools. Next up is your data store indexes. So data store, it's a database. You have indexes that you want to query on. So you just have to go set up those. And then the web.xml is your deployment descriptor. I generally just stuck with the default. This is another one that Google Cloud will provide you. But again, DevOps people will probably tell me that there's a better way to do this. So testing. So I wrote it all. I'll have the code up later on GitHub. I didn't know if I had enough time to go through everything, but so imagine in that time we wrote a server and an Android app, and now we want to test this out. So Google provides some awesome tools for GCloud. I was very amazed by how well it all works. So you're going to want to start downloading this command line tool. So every operating system, and it's just going to give you access to this GCloud command. First thing you're going to do is GCloud Init, and you're going to log in to your Gmail. And from here, you can either use a project that you already created. So I already had an Oreo tracker created. Or you can even do everything straight from the command line. You never really have to view the web if you don't want to. So you're just going to want to make sure you install, run that initializer. So next up, so as I mentioned, we're using Datastore for our database. So before we hit that up to the server, we can actually emulate Cloud Datastore locally. So you're just going to run the components install on the Datastore. It is extremely slow, so feel free to take your time doing that. And the next up, you're just going to open up an emulator. Be sure to take note with your host port where you're going to run it from. So I chose 8484. And then it'll eventually go, and then finally you'll get this nice executing. And now you have Datastore running. This command at the bottom, it's just really helpful. The nice part about Datastore is it's just a file. Datastore is a document-based database. So on your computer, it's just a file. And if you ever screw anything up, just delete the file, restart your database, and there's like nothing happened. So it's really nice, really helps with testing, and the fact that you can save old versions, remove anything that you need. So the one change that you need to test locally versus your deployment is you're going to need to tell Objectify where your data store exists. So as I mentioned, Objectify is our way to talk to Datastore. So by default, the nice thing about running this all on GCP is if you just tell Objectify service to start, it will automatically find your data store. But since we're going to run it locally, you're just going to need to set your host. So again, 8484, set your project name, and then you should be good to go. So you can do this either compile, find flag, or just change the code and make sure to change it back before you deploy. And then inside your project, inside your server module, you're just going to run Gradle W app engine run. It's going to spit out a bunch of things as Gradle does. It's going to make your pan spin as Gradle does. And at the end, you'll get this nice info. Module instance is running at, it'll run by default on 8080, and your dev app server is now running. So awesome. You now have an app server running. So now we're going to test adding, but this is just a server. You're running a full Ktor server locally, so you can just run a curl command. So here I just hit localhost 8080, my endpoint, sent up some JSON, and then my server is set to just respond with the JSON that you sent up, assuming that it all worked out. And so I got that response right. Also nice, if you're running a full server here, is if you want to see the results of the get, you can just go pull it up in your browser. So I just went to localhost 8080/row, and this is exactly what you'll see in your app. You can, and yeah, you have a full server running. You can test this on your Android emulator. You'll have to do some tricks to get it to talk to localhost, but you now have everything running locally, and if you really wanted to, you could even keep it running without deploying, but that would be a great talk if I just said run everything locally. So about deploying. So make sure again to remove your Objectify factory. So we're going to actually deploy. It's not going to know where localhost is. Probably have the wrong port. So you just want to make sure to be using the default initializer. For the GCloud plugin, if you remembered at the beginning, it asks us to select what project. So you're going to want to make sure that you're on the right one. If you're worried about it, you can run GCloud Init as much as you want, and it'll just go, hey, you already initialized, here's your settings. Hit 1 if this is still correct. So feel free to check it. You can run Init over and over again. And then last thing, as I said in my key file slide, make sure that your files are in the correct place in your web app and resources directory. Otherwise, it just won't deploy, it won't run, and you'll sit there very annoyed. So to deploy, easy enough. Gradle, you just run app engine deploy. Again, spit out a ton. Again, your fans will go crazy, and eventually at the end, you'll get a deployed service to your URL. And then you celebrate. Because that's it. So, like I said, full stack in a weekend. This was a quick countdown full stack in 17 minutes. So it's really that simple. The Ktor server, Ktor is great. You're able to get it up super quickly. Android apps, as I said, I'm sure that there's plenty of Android developers here. But if you don't want to do Android, you can do web. Kotlin JS will work with this. Whatever modules that you want, and you can be sure to share all of that code inside your shared module. Now, it wouldn't be a talk about testing things without debugging them. So GCloud, again, great, not only because it's free, but because Google provides some great tooling. So you have the options. You can run using that GCloud plugin. You can tail your logs, so watch everything. Or if you're not a command line person, then you just have to go to this URL. So if you just remove the project Oreo tracker, it'll automatically figure out which one you most recently went to, and you have a nice UI, web UI for checking out your logs. Now let's say that you screwed up. So the other nice thing about Google Cloud is that it will keep your old versions up there. So what I have is you just have to go to the versions. So right here I have two of them, one that I called alpha, and then the other one which was just an automatic generated timestamp. So you'll see I clicked on the alpha, hit migrate traffic. It's going to say we're going to start sending all of your traffic to that one. So I just hit migrate, and then it will take a minute or two. But after that, now suddenly if you screwed up, that version is still going to live on the cloud. But now every time you try and hit the endpoints, it's going to go back to the alpha version. So you can keep on deploying. You never have to worry about breaking anything, and you can always revert to a previously deployed file. And again, with Cloud Datastore, you're not a command line person, feel free to just check out the Datastore entities, and you can view everything straight on the web. So you can check out your entities, you can query by the kind of entities. If you're SQL, or as they call it, GQL, I think, GQL, you can do that straight from the command line. And again, you can manage everything straight from here. So thank you, everyone, from Oreo and I wish that I could have brought him. But yeah, as I said, I'll have these slides up on my Twitter, so I'm at Josh Fine on Twitter. I'll have them on my GitHub for if you want to check out how the Ktor server is written or the Android app. So I'll have those up shortly. And yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for coming to my talk.